Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to talk about my favorite makeup brushes. I have a ton of great makeup brushes to tell you guys about. For every high-end brush, I'm going to show you a more affordable dupe. I absolutely love every single brush that I'm talking about today. I use them all the time. They're amazing brushes. I want you guys to be able to afford every single brush in this video because I know that it can get very expensive when you guys are buying brushes, especially if you're starting out. So yeah, if you guys want to see what my favorite brushes are, definitely keep on watching. Okay, so we're gonna start with the Beauty Blender. This one is super dirty, but I absolutely love this for all over foundation, all over concealer. I also like to use this to set the under eyes with powder. It literally works for so many things. My favorite drugstore version of the Beauty Blender is this one by Real Techniques. It's super soft. I actually used it to do my makeup today. These two are my absolute favorite. For foundation, my favorite brush is actually the It Cosmetics Airbrush Blurring Foundation number 101 by Ulta. It's almost like a flat kabuki brush. It's very dense. It gives a super flawless airbrush look to the skin. My favorite way to use this is actually just by kind of pushing the product into the skin and blending it out. I also have an affordable version of this brush that I love, and this one is by Real Techniques. It is the Expert Face Brush. This one's a little bit bigger, this one's a little more dense and a little tiny bit smaller, but honestly they do the same thing. If this one's dirty, I gravitate towards this one. I have these two brushes here. So they look like foundation brushes as well, but I don't actually use them to blend out my foundation. I like using these to apply cream products to my face. So the first one is the It Brushes for Ulta. This is number 104. It says Airbrush Flawless Foundation. As I mentioned, I'll just use this to apply foundation all over the skin, and then I'll blend it out using another brush or a beauty blender. And my more affordable version of this brush is the Real Techniques Pointed Foundation Brush. It's the same thing. This one's a little bit bigger. This one's a little thinner and a little bit smaller, but honestly, they do the same thing. I just use this almost as like a spatula to kind of apply the product everywhere and then blend it out. So these are really, really good brushes. Usually I use my beauty blender or beauty sponge to blend that concealer underneath the eyes, but you guys know how you get like concealer in the inner corner and you kind of don't want to use your fingers to blend that out, or you can't really get in there. So I have two brushes that I absolutely love using for that purpose. So this first one is by It Cosmetics for Ulta. The name rubbed off because I've used this brush so much, but as always, everything will be linked down below. So this is just like a fluffy domed brush. It's a little bit dense, but it's not too dense. So you can actually blend out all of your concealer using this brush, and you can get in the inner corner. My more affordable version of this brush is by Morphe, and this is the R32. Obviously, this is a little bit smaller, a little bit more dense than this one, but essentially they do the same thing. I like using this to really get in the corner there, and also I'll use it to blend right underneath the eye if we get that crease right there with the concealer. Next up are my favorite brushes for blending out cream contour. So my first one is the MAC 130. This is obviously the high-end version, and I really like this brush because it's like a stippling brush and you can really get in there and buff that contour out. It blends the contour like a dream. I love this brush so much. And the more affordable version of that brush is this Delium Tools brush number 954. So you can see that this one is flat on the top and this is angled, but essentially they do the same thing. One of my little tricks when blending out cream contours using these brushes is spraying a little bit of MAC Fix Plus on top, and it just kind of makes the brush a little bit wet and helps blend that product out a lot easier. Next up are two brushes for powder contour. So my favorite powder contour brush is the MAC 189 or I don't know, I'll link it down below. But basically it's like a little fluffy brush, and it's very packed, and it's actually not too fluffy. It's just perfect, and you can also get in there and kind of be very concentrated with your contour. I will also kind of like go around my face using this brush. It's just a really good brush. My affordable version of that brush is by Real Techniques, and it's called the Contour Brush. And as you guys can tell, it's very similar. This is a little more rounded at the top, but they do the same thing. It's small enough where it can get in there, and it's fluffy enough where it's gonna blend the product out really well. So next up are two setting brushes. And I actually have a ton of favorite setting brushes, but these two are literally the ones that I gravitate towards the most. The first affordable version is the e.l.f. Blush Brush. I do like this for blush as well because it's small and it can really get on the cheeks exactly where you want it. but this is also really great to set underneath the eyes. And I believe that the black brush line by Elle are all about $3. So they're very affordable, which is why I have several of these actually. So I still wanted to give you two options, even though I don't have a high-end version of a setting brush that I like. But this is a Delium Tools 944 brush, and it's a little bit different because it's a little more rounded than this brush, but like I said, they do the same thing. I'll use it to set underneath the eyes. It's also great to kind of swipe away any powder. You can also use this for blush, and if you really want to, you can use this for a highlight, but essentially I use this to set underneath the eye and also get rid of that excess powder when you do like baking. So next up we have some bronzer brushes. My first favorite is the Morphe R2. It's super big and fluffy. It's just a really, really nice quality brush. It honestly feels like some of my higher end versions. So I'm kind of using this one as my higher end version, but I have one that's a little bit cheaper and just as good. This is the Elle complexion brush. It's a little bit smaller in size, but it's just kind of the same shape. It's very fluffy and it applies the bronzer so nice. So you can use this for bronzer, for all over powder, really for anything that you want, but these two are amazing. I have two more favorites for all over bronzer, and the first one is the MAC 130. As you can see, it's kind of fluffy and big, and it comes to a point here. And this is great because you can really get in there and it applies product nice and evenly all over. And one that's very, very similar to that and way cheaper is the Delium Tools 974 brush. It does the same exact thing. They're both really great brushes. Now on to some highlighter brushes. One of my favorite highlighter brushes is the Morphe R36. It's like a little dome brush. It's super fluffy, and this picks up so much of the highlight, and it applies the highlight so nice on the cheekbones. I actually used it today to apply this highlight, and I just really like the way it applies highlight. Basically, that's all I have to say about it. Now I have an even cheaper brush to show you guys, and this is the Elle fan brush. If you guys have been watching me since day one, you can see that I've always loved this brush. I use it in many of my tutorials. There is something about the fan brush that just really sits on the top of your cheekbones and applies the product beautifully. It's just an amazing brush, and I love that for highlight. Moving on to eye brushes, my absolute favorite go-to fluffy blending brush for the crease is the Sigma E40. This is also one of those brushes that if you've been watching me since day one, you've seen me use it almost in every tutorial. I've tried so many other fluffy crease brushes, but this is just my go-to. My dupe for that brush would be this Royal and Langnickel crease brush. I probably said that wrong, but it looks very similar to this, and it's just a more affordable version. I believe that I picked this up at one of the beauty conventions in New York. So this is just a really great brush. It does the same exact thing. I absolutely love it. So next up, I have a small tapered blending brush. This is also by Sigma. This is the E45, and it's a little bit smaller and more tapered. And what this does is that it really gets in the crease. You're able to blend your eyeshadow a little bit more concentrated in the crease as opposed to all over. So I really love this brush, and I couldn't find an exact dupe in my collection for this, but I found something very similar that I also gravitate towards, and this is the Delium Tools 783. It's very similar to this one. The Sigma one is a little more pointed, but essentially it does the same thing. It fits perfectly in the crease, blends really easily, and these are just two very good brushes. And as you guys can see, a lot of my dupes are by Delium Tools. This is a very affordable brand. So in most of my tutorials, when you guys see me using the all over crease brush, I usually always go in after that with a smaller, more condensed crease brush. So this one is by Sigma. It's the Blending E25. It's a little bit flatter and a little bit more condensed, and this also helps pack on the color. And I usually like using this towards the outer corner and kind of bringing it in. It's a really great overall crease brush, and I have actually two dupes for this brush. The first one is the Morphe R39. It is the exact same brush, same look and everything. And I also have the Delium Tools 776. I have almost like a million of these brushes. I literally need them because I use them in every single eyeshadow look that I do. So instead of always kind of having one sit around and being dirty. I have a ton of them, so I can always grab a new one when I need it. Okay, so as far as the lower lash line goes, this is my go-to brush. This is the It Brushes for Ulta, and it is number 124. Again, the numbers are all rubbed off of these, so it's hard to see. But this is a little bit softer than a traditional pencil brush. I feel like sometimes those are really harsh on that lower lash line and it's very sensitive, so I like using something like this that's a little softer and a little more fluffy, and it helps really pack on that color. But I have two dupes that I love. The first one is the Delium Tools number 780. This is the more traditional pencil brush, but it really does a great job. I actually used it on my eyes today. And I have another one. This is the Real Techniques shading brush. And this one's a little bit different. It's a little bit wider and a little bit flatter, but it's still fluffy, which is why I like using it for that lower lash line, because it really helps blend out that product. For the lower lash line, I love using the MAC 212 brush. It's just a flat brush like this. What I like to use this for is to really get underneath that lash line and kind of stamp on that black eyeshadow. It almost defines your eye way more than if you didn't use it. And I have another dupe for that, and this is the Delium Tools number 714. It's the exact same thing. If I can't get the MAC one, I go for this one. It really doesn't matter to me. They're both my favorite. So next I just grabbed a bunch of these type of brushes. These are just like synthetic brushes. So on some of them they say concealer brushes, but you can really use this for anything. So I might use this to apply like a glitter eyeshadow or concealer underneath the eyes. This is just a really great brush. I feel like everybody needs at least one of these. They're just a really great brush for cream products, and I have 1,000 of them sitting around just because they always get dirty and they get dirty fast. So that completes my video for my favorite makeup brushes. Hopefully this was somewhat helpful for you guys. If you guys have any brushes you can recommend for me to try out, definitely let me know down below. I really wanted to make this a little bit different by giving you guys a higher end version and a more affordable version, because I know that brushes can get very expensive and not all of us can afford to just go buy an entire brush kit. So yeah, so those are my tips and my favorite brushes, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!
If the lighting looks a little bit different in this video, it's because I'm filming at night. This is actually my first video ever filmed at night, which is crazy, right? This is the Delium Tools 944 talk all about, and it distributes. I can't freaking say that word right now. Next up, we have some blush. Yeah, girl. Next up, we have some bronzer. Favorite high-end version